everyone. Welcome to Adobe Live. How is everyone today? I'm Shauna Lynn. I'm an illustrator and lettering artist in the Chicago area. Uh, Thank you for joining in if you're just joining in. And if you have been hanging out all day, thanks for sticking around. In the chat, I see we've got Jack, Robert, Oliver. Hello, everyone. Joshua Apurva. I hope I said that right. And Alejandro. Hello. How are you all? What's new? What's happening? What's going on? So those of you who don't know, I'm Shauna Lynn, like I said, and I'm an illustrator, children's book illustrator, and lettering artist. I live in the Chicago area. And I love Adobe. I love being here. I think it's really fun and I appreciate them bringing me on. But I thought today it would be really fun to to show you how I create a product mock-up. So a lot of the work I do is illustration, and I find that the easiest way to show it to clients and display to my portfolio is to actually mock it up, especially when it comes to a children's book where I won't see the final result for a good year sometimes. I finished a book in November. I won't see it until the end of October. Another one I finished in December, I won't see till July. So if I want to show the cover in my portfolio, I want to be able to mock it up. So I do a lot of mock-ups in that regard, but I also do graphic design on the side. I would say for funsies, but I also do freelance jobs. And so a lot of times for clients, you want to mock up your, mock up what you create so that you can show them in context what you have envisioned and what it could be, because a lot of times the clients have no idea. So this is on my screen right now. These are a few things that I've mocked up. And pretty much all of this was just for fun stuff. These are not real mock-ups for clients or anything. But I made a fake brand called the Page Hotel. So I did coffee cups and little Keurig type pods. I also did a little the little hotel card, hotel key. I did a mock-up of a bag. So if you see the art on its own, it's just very flat. You can't really picture it in context, but you can put it in context and it looks really cool. Same with this little book cover. This doesn't exist. It is not a real book, but I want to get into doing middle grade covers just as an extra thing to do in addition to board books and picture books. So I came up with this fake cover and then I mocked it up so that potential publishers can see what I can do. Same with apparel. It's really fun to mock this stuff up because you can then show people, this is why you should hire me, or this is why you should buy my product. And it's nice because you don't have to invest in the actual thing. So I don't have to buy a sweatshirt and print it and then take photos and do that. I can fake it for whatever I need to do. It's also, mockups are also a really good way. I know for myself personally, if I'm staring at an illustration for a long time, there's a lot of times that I'm just this work sucks. I don't think it's that good. I feel like I could do so much better. And a lot of that is just because I've been staring at it for a long time. And so what putting my work into a mock-up will do is it gives me more of an objective view of my work. And so it takes out that it takes the personal part out of it, where I can actually see it in context and see it may not be actually that bad, or I can see how to fix it that way and see how to make it better because I know it's going to go on XYZ. So I'm very much a big proponent of doing mock-ups. I think they're fun. And I also just think they're really fun to make. I think they're fun to show people. And I always have this goal of I want to make things as realistic looking as possible. So that's a lot of the reason why I do it. So these are, like I said, these are ones I've done for fun. I did the Happy Turkey Day bag on Adobe back in November. In November or December, one of those two. Was a holiday bag episode. So I did do a version so that you can see what it starts at and what it could be. So this is just a stock photo from Adobe, and we're going to be using Adobe Stock photos today because you could have found the perfect product shot, but you might not know how to put your product design on it, and you may not want to actually have to make the thing. But say you find this like perfect product shot, but you're like, I don't know how to put this in a mock-up. I don't know how to make this. We're gonna show you. I'm gonna show you. So I did this last night. I took it from this to this using just some random illustration I had done the other day, and just threw some type on just to see what it could look like and what it could be. And so it really does kind of take that. It takes, I'm tripping over my words. This happens all the time. My thoughts are like 10 steps ahead of where my mouth is talking. So bear with me. But it's really fun to see like how your illustrations could be used. So in a situation like this, like I could put this illustration pattern, these florals, I could put them up for sale, or I could put them up for licensing, and I could mock them up on a multitude of products and show potential clients like what it could be used on. So I could mock it up on soap bottles, blankets, kids products, beauty products, the list goes on. And it's a great way to give an idea of like how it could be used. And a lot of people in licensing will do that, where they'll have their pattern created, but then they also create the mock-up that shows how it could be used to give potential licensees or licensors an idea of what it could be used on and what they could do. So I have this mock-up that I pulled for today. I also had this one, but I thought this is going to be kind of boring, even though we've got like about 50 minutes to do this. I felt that I can at the very least get the lotion bottle done, but the goal is we're going to try and get them all, get both the box and the lotion bottle working. So we're starting with this. It's going to be really fun. And if you've done this before and it's been successful, just know that there's like 1,000 different ways that you can come to the same conclusion. So I'm showing you my process, and the way that I approach it kind of changes like mock-up to mock-up, just because the image is always a little bit different. The lighting may be a little different. I might have to do more adjusting in certain places. So this is my process. It's a lot of trial and error, but we're going to have a lot of fun doing this, and it's going to make sense, hopefully, and be a lot of fun. So I'm going to start by making a new group in my layer palette, and I'm going to call this design. And then within that group, I'm also going to create another group, and that's going to be the design on product. It helps if I spell product right. That happens when I'm typing sideways. And then we're also going to create another group called shadow and highlight. So to start, what I want to do is I'm going to go to my rectangle option, my rectangle tool, and I'm going to create a rectangle that's about as wide as the top of this this lotion bottle. And if you guys have questions, like feel free to like ask in the chat. I'm checking as I go. But so I'm going to create a rectangle that's about as wide as the top of the lotion bottle and as long as the length of it before the cap. And I'm going to stop it too as well, like right below where it's crimped, because you don't print on that. Like if you ever look at a tube of toothpaste, it's always white at the end. You don't print on that portion. So we've got this rectangle. We're going to call this design. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to convert it to a smart object. And then I'm going to do Command J and duplicate it. So then I'm going to label this one design, or place design here. And then I'm going to move it outside of my group, because generally you're not going to touch anything within this design folder. If you like buy a mock-up from someone, you might do a little bit of editing, but generally everyone makes it really easy. So you just put the design, in the smart object box, and then it'll apply, and all the effects are in that folder. So the folder will house the effects, the actual design that you just pop in. It'll be right outside there, and it's linked. So this one right here is linked to the design in the folder. What I'm going to do with the editable, the one that I'm labeling as kind of editable, is we're going to take the fill and bring it to 0. So that way it doesn't show, but whatever you apply to this one will apply to the one that is within your design folder. So for the sake of being able to see what I'm doing, I'm going to take the opacity of the design part that we are editing for the effect. I'm going to take it down, and then we're going to do Command T. And then we're going to press this little button up here. It is the warp tool. You can also right click and choose warp. And what that's going to allow us to do is adjust and pull the image around the product. And if you had, for example, like if you had like a cylindrical, a cup or what have you, you can go under where it says warp up here. You can go under custom and you can choose cylinder, and it'll set it up so it's ready to go in a cylindrical form. So it'll already be kind of wrapped. We're not doing that in this one. We're gonna go to warp. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom in. And Robert says, do you do a displacement mask, then you do mock-ups? You know what's funny is like I have never managed to get the hang of displacement masks. I'm going to show the way that I do the shading and highlights, and it's probably going to be different than like what other people do, and there's probably an easier way, or there's all kinds of ways. Like displacement maps, they'll work really well when you have something like a t-shirt that has a lot of, like, especially if it's like a wrinkled t-shirt. Displacement masks do work well with that. But those I've never quite figured out how to do really well. I'm better with something like this where it's not so intricate. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull this one, and I'm just gonna start aligning it alongside or along this along the top of the edge here. And I'm just going to line it along the edges of the product. So you can see here, like if I pull this in and I pull this in, there we go. So you can see like down here, it's not quite flush with the product. So what I'm going to do in this instance is I'm going to hold down Command. And what that's going to do is allow me to add another point within this warp. And if you go far over, you can get one that just goes horizontal, and then the same goes to the bottom. You can do one that's just vertical. So if you don't need like both sections. So I'm going to put one right here. And then what that's going to allow me to do is pull this out here. And then I can pull this out just a bit as well. And if it's a little bit outside of the outline, we can work with that, because what we'll end up doing is selecting the object and creating a mask that goes over that. So then we're going to do the same over here. So because I created one over here, an extra point over here, it creates an extra point here. So I'm just going to pull that over a little bit. We're going to pull this in. And then this out. Like I said, it's not going to be perfect. We're not going for perfection quite yet. And then I'm going to pull this down just a little bit so that it aligns with the cap. So now we have this, like I said, not perfect. I'm actually going to fix that just a little bit, because I would rather it be just a little outside of the design than too far in. So what'll happen now is if I were to double click my smart object and I were to go change the color, like we'll do that for now just because that works. You'd save, and then you can go back to your main piece and it will change the smart object that is attached. Now, we can already see that right now it looks really flat, and that's because we haven't applied any adjustment layers to it and we haven't changed the blending mode. So you can do multiply or you can do linear burn. And ultimately that sort of just kind of comes down to what looks better, because I'll often do linear burn, but if something is like this, sometimes multiply works. But what that's going to do is allow you to see the layer that's underneath. So from here, you're going to do our shadow and highlight. I'm going to move this into the design on product. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to try 2 different ways. One might work, it might not, or it will. We'll see. This is one that I did find recently that is an interesting way to go about it. And then I have my way of that might be a little bit easier, but I want to see if it's going to work, because sometimes I was trying it last night and sometimes it works with products and sometimes it doesn't, but it worked really well with shirts is what I saw. So we're going to do Command A and select all, Command C. And then we're going to go to our channels. And what we're going to do here is create a new channel, and it's going to be an alpha layer or an alpha channel. And you're going to paste your layer. You're going to go Command I to invert. You're going to hit Command D. And then you're going to hit Command and press and tap on your layer, and hit Command C. Create a new layer and Command V. Now what that's done, oh, let me turn off that layer that's underneath here. Now what that's done is it's grabbed only the shadows, like only the shading from your entire image. So ideally, if you're doing this, you only have the product selected, because you'll have like just a plain white background. So it would work with the other image I have in here. But what I'm going to do is now I'm going to cut out the product instead, and then we're going to do this again. But if you had something like a t-shirt on a white background, it would work. It would actually work really well because you have a very stark contrast. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to rasterize it so that I can easily edit it. Because right now it's a smart object linked to my libraries, and I don't want to make any edits to the one that I've linked to my library. So we're going to open properties, and we can go select subject, and we're going to see how close this gets. Because it does have oh, that actually did pretty good. That did not do too bad. I have to do a little bit of, just a little bit of adjusting here, but in the grand scheme, that actually did not turn out too bad. So I'm just going to pen tool this. Right click, selection. Oh, I guess that doesn't add to it. Thought it would. All right, well, for this instance, then we're just going to pen tool, because I can do this fairly quickly because it's a lot of straight lines. And I'm not going to be too precious with my lines for this right now, because this is just so that we have some shading selected. And this is for the whole product, not just the lotion bottle. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to make selection, and I'm going to feather it just a little bit. So I put it on 2, and then I'm going to put a mask on it. And then what that's done is it's cut my product out for me. And I'm going to apply my mask. And then we're going to Command A, Command C. We're going to create a new alpha channel. Command V, invert, Command D, select, Command select, Command C, and Command V. And it doesn't put it right on top of here. So I got to line it up just a little bit. So like in this instance, it's not my favorite option in terms of creating a shadow effect. It works, just not my favorite way to go about it. But what I would do is pop it above my design here so that it doesn't get lost under the design. How do you connect the two rectangles? Oh, two rectangles. Oh, the smart objects? All it is you, in this instant, for this, I made a shape. I dragged my shape so it was there. I went and right-clicked, converted it to a smart object, and then I just did Command J, but you can also right-click and choose Duplicate Layer. And that's just going to create a copy of your smart object, and it keeps it linked. If you had, say, like 3 of these lotion bottles in a row and you were just using the exact same mock-up and 3 times, you would then you would want to be able to change your smart object. So you would actually create 3 separate ones by going and scrolling down. You'd right click and you'd go new smart object via copy, and that will create a new instance of your smart object. So then you have the same shape but two different ones. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So at this point, I want to see what my design looks like so that I can see if it matches up correctly. Because part of this too is I'm not going to need the shading like on the bottle cap here, but we're also going to throw an option to like recolor the bottle cap a little bit. But so I'm going to double click on my smart object. And then I have some art that I pulled together for this. And so we're going to see how close it gets, because I just sort of guessed on like what the size would be. So we're going to fit that in. We're going to hit save. And then I'm going to go back to my file. And it has now popped my object in. Does this look really blown out suddenly, or is it just my eyes? What's going on? Oh, because that's why it didn't work. The opacity was still down. Whoops. Okay, so then you're going to put your thing back on. So this is where you actually can see the difference between multiply and linear burn. So multiply, you don't get as deep shading down here as like I personally would want. But if I do linear burn, it shows through. And then what I can do is just take my opacity down just a hair. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to command click on my separated out object. And I'm going to create a mask on my group. And then I'm just going to feather it out a little bit. Just so that it gives it a little bit more depth and just kind of gives the illusion that it's kind of wrapping around. Piece. I want it to move just a little bit. Here we go. We're just gonna use and then what I'm going to do too is I'm going to go in and I'm just going to do some masking by hand, because I want it to get just a little closer to the edge here. So I'm using just a regular soft edge brush and painting it in. much, just enough to get it a little closer to the edge. And this is something that, like, from far away, you are not going to notice that sort of thing. This is more of like an I know it's there situation. And then I actually have to do a little bit of adjusting here and do the warp. So if you've had the warp on there, you want to put it back on. And then you're just going to do just a little bit of shifting of parts. Okay. Now we have our shadow on top, and if I put it at 100%, that's what we get. But if I take it down, it just sort of, it lightens it up just a little bit so it's not too harsh. But another way that you can go about doing this is you can go and duplicate your object. So I'm going to do Command J, and then I'm going to move this up into shadows and highlights. I'm going to call this one shadows. I'm going to Command J again. Give me midtones. And then we're going to Command J one more time. We're going to do highlights. I'm going to turn these off for the moment. This up just a little bit so you can see more of my thing. So I'm going to do Command L. This is going to open up the levels. And I'm actually going to drag it over to the left. And then I can go in here and do multiply, or I can do linear burn. It's kind of just down to what I feel is working in the moment. And then you can take your opacity down. But what that does is it just kind of helps bring those shadows back in. And it doesn't take much. So now we're going to throw in our midtones, our levels. Select that. I'm going to do linear dodge add. And then we're going to take the opacity like way, way down. Because we're not going to need a whole lot of the midtones. Because there's not a whole lot of depth to this particular model. And then turn on our highlights. We're going to do levels, and we're going to drag this to the right. We're going to make it darker, and then we're going to hit screen. And then we're going to drop the opacity down of that just a bit too. So again, it doesn't take much. Like I have this down at like 10%. But so if I were to take my shadow and highlights and turn it back on, it just gives it just a little bit more depth. So it looks a little more realistic. And then one like last little thing I'm going to do to my actual smart object that is in the design here is I'm going to put a filter on it. And what it's going to do is do a smart filter. So it doesn't affect my smart object file. So if I open the smart object, I'm not going to see that effect in there, but it's going to apply the effect in the program. And in this file, it'll apply it to that layer without, I guess without rasterizing my layer. So I can always turn it off and remove it if I needed to. So we're going to go filter. We're going to go to noise. And we're going to go to add noise. And you can see right now, like that's a lot of noise. We do not need it to be that intense. So I'm going to take it down quite a bit. Get down to like 2%. And what that's going to do is it's just going to give it a little bit more of a photo effect so that it looks more like it's part of the product. And it's a case of like, these are minor things that others may not notice, others may not do. But you can see that it just adds a little bit. So now because your background naturally has noise because it's a photo, and then now this has some noise. So we have our hand lotion. Now, do we want to go for the box? I have 20 minutes. I think I can do this. I think I can do this. Does anybody have any questions before I go forward? Because I want to make sure I'm not going too fast, but this is also something where it really doesn't take a whole ton of time. Especially when it comes to like if you want to make your own mock-up. It's really quite fun. We can also, you can apply like a color to your object, because I've got two objects in here. I'd have to separate out the one, but we'd do it later. But what I could do, I can show this with this particular one. I'm gonna pop this in just so I can show you how I would apply this to the one layer. So we're gonna rasterize this. I'm going to remove the background. And so what that's done, it's isolated my object basically. So what I would do then is I can just go and create a solid color adjustment layer. And I'm just going to pick a color at random, and then we're going to do a clipping mask. So you can either do right click, create clipping mask, or you can hit Alt. And from there, you're going to go scroll down to your blending modes. You're going to choose color. Actually, I take that back. It may not work as well in that instance. I'm going to copy the. Oh, no, that's correct. Just because I have that's interesting. Sometimes color works, sometimes it doesn't. This is a linear burn instance. So we can change the color of our object this way. Like I said, there's like 20,000 different ways to get to the same conclusion, but they don't always work. They don't always work consistently like mock-up to mock-up. So it's a lot of just trial and error and playing until it works. And so like in this case, I wanted to hit rotate. In this instance, I could even go so far as to mask out the bottle so that we just change the cap color. And if I were doing this for myself, this would be a lot cleaner. Like if I were doing this for my portfolio, I would be very meticulous. Not that I'm not being meticulous now, but you know what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lasso tool this, and then we're just going to hit paint bucket that. So now I can just change the color of the cap if I wanted. So just another little thing you're able to do. So if I turn my design back on, I'm going to change the name of this particular group to lotion design so that I can separate it out. What do you mean it's not taking any color other than gray? Priva says it's fun, but mine's not taking any color other than gray. You might, if you mean using the color blending mode, you might just have to play with different blending modes, because sometimes that is the case. Otherwise, like if your smart object is gray, you're gonna just double click on your file, and it will open it up. So now I'm going to do the box. I'm going to create a new folder. We're going to call this box design. I'm going to create another group to go inside that. This is going to be shadow highlight. And I'm actually going to bring this below the lotion because I don't want it overlapping. And what's going to happen is I'm going to have to mask out part of the lotion bottle. So we're going to make our rectangle again. And with this, I would actually end up doing three separate smart objects. I could, in theory, just do the whole box as one color and then just apply the design to the front of the box. But there's different things, you know, there's different options in there. Alejandro, when you create a new fill or adjustment layer, Shauna selected gradient and two rectangles automatically appear. I hope I've answered the question. If it's still unclear, just let me know and I can do my best to expand on it. So because this is at an angle, one thing that you're gonna have to do. When should I schedule it? That is no, Siri. I don't know why that just no. Sorry. What you want to do is you're going to make it just slightly wider than the box, because if it's at an angle, you want to make sure that the what is it? Not perspective. Proportions are correct. Height-wise, it's going to stay the same. We can use as is. So we're just going to make it slightly wider. So I have a new rectangle. Clever. Now I want a lotion design hotline. Oh, are you talking about my phone deciding to talk to me? I need to disable that. I don't ever use it. Okay, so now I'm going to right click on my rectangle. I'm going to convert it to a smart object. One thing that I would recommend is if you do find you're working often in Photoshop and you're creating smart objects a lot, you can go and create a keystroke. And I might have it enabled in here. Let me see. I think it was Command K that I set up Command K because I was working with a lot of smart objects when I was doing some photo editing at one point, and it saved me a lot of time. It's just how I've also enabled the key. If I just hit N, it opens up my color picker, and it's just ways to kind of make my workflow a little faster. So we're going to call this design. I'm going to Command J to duplicate it, and we're going to put that right below our lotion design. We're going to put place design here. I'm actually going to do box. And then I'm going to take this fill and bring it down to 0. And then the box, I'm going to take the opacity down so that I can see my box. I'm going to double click and I'm going to go change the color so that it is easier for me to see. And then because it's a box, you actually don't really need to use the warp tool so much. So we're going to do Command T. And then I'm going to hold down Command, and I'm going to pull the edge of my layer. Do the same here. I'm going to hold down Command as I adjust and pull here. And so you can see, whoa, there we go. So you can see that it now is almost perfect to the, you know, it's almost aligned. It's just enough. It's fine for what we need here. You know, I can take it like a little further over and just kind of do a little bit of adjusting, you know, in places. But in the grand scheme of things, for what we need right now, it's fine. Oh, it's a question by, okay, so when you create a new fill or adjustment layer, gradient and two rectangles automatically appear. How do you connect the two rectangles? And by two rectangles, you mean what I just made now, like the smart object, because it connects just by duplicating it. They'll remain linked. So whatever I do to this one here will apply to this one down here. But because I've done this, technically, like I could go in and I could open this up and it would still show my rectangle in the correct mode. But it's much easier when especially if you're sending something to a client or you're selling a mock-up or what have you, it's easier to have your smart object separated out so that the person has the easiest, whoever's using it, like has the easiest way of accessing it. So I have to do a little bit of adjusting here. And I'm going to make a mask on my box design. I'm going to use the pen tool. And I'm doing the mask on the actual group because I'm going to have stuff inside that I want connected to the box. So I'm just going to quickly mask this out. It's not going to be perfect for the sake of timing. We're just going to do as we can. But we just want to try to get it so that the just so that we're able to cut out the box or cut out the lotion just a little bit. All right, and then it's not going to really matter where I put it outside of there. We're going to right click, make selection. I'm going to feather it, but we'll try 5 pixels and see. And then I'm going to use the paint bucket tool and we're going to paint bucket it so that it's masked out. Now I'm going to take my design. I'm going to switch the blending mode to linear burn. Bring that up. So we've got, see, and you can see here, like I would adjust this before I showed it to a client. Like I would go and I would clean this up. And you would feather, and you want to feather because the edges of these are not hard lines. You can see that they're fairly soft. So like this hard line is very obvious. So what I can actually do is I can click on my layer mask and in my properties, I can feather it just a little bit more. Well, I can feather the mask, the other part of it I can't map. Sorry, y'all. Okay. I'm gonna click on this and I'm gonna create a mask around it. Okay, this I can feather just a little bit. Okay, for the sake of what we're doing, it's good. So we're gonna place box design in. I'm gonna pull the exact same design as I had for the lotion. And because it's not quite tall enough, I'm going to change the color of the rectangle. We're going to select this blue. And then for the sake of consistency, I'm just going to quickly paint in a little section here. So we have these connected. I've got a couple moments. Again, not perfect. We're not going for perfection today. We are going for it works. Okay, so that's fairly caught up. So that's good. We'll work with this. So we're gonna hit save. Go back to our box. You can see now we have our box design, and what you can do to make it look more realistic is add things like the weight and any little info that would go on the front of the box. And you know, expand it out and such too, or you could add whatever, like the client logo up here, what have you. That package design is a whole separate thing. So what I'm going to do to this is I'm going to go back over into where the design is. I'm going to do what I did with the lotion bottle, and we are going to apply noise to it, just like we did the previous one. So that way it's got a little bit more of a realistic render to it. And then you have the same thing where the we have our shadow and highlight, and it's applying to the box as well. So I can take the shadow down just a little bit so it's not so intense. In this case, like I have a shadow highlight layer. I'm not, or a group, I probably won't need it for this one, but I could in theory actually pull just the box from this and select it and do the same thing with the alpha mask. So what I'm gonna do though is we're gonna create a color on the box. So we're gonna pen tool this. And this is gonna be quick and dirty. We will, again, if I were doing this for clients, it would be a lot cleaner. But so we're gonna do, this is if we were gonna make the side of the box, or right click, and do define custom shape. Actually will make our life a little easier in that regard. Oh wait, no, it won't, because we want it to be, no, I ignore everything I just said. If you wanted to do just color, you can do it this way and apply a selection. And then with it masked, you can do a solid color adjustment layer. We can pull this same color. And then you would go and do, in this instance, linear burn may be too intense. So I would probably do multiply in that instance. And then you can go in and kind of adjust your color a little bit so that it matches better. Because it color picked from this, and that's darker than what my actual file is. So yeah, multiply in this instance works. Now, if you were to apply a box design to the side, we would create a rectangle. We go as long as our box, we do the height, and then we go just a little further out. We would convert to a smart object. We would duplicate it. And I'm going to pull it up here. And this would be box side. Bring the fill down to 0. And then I will adjust this one to match. And again, doing mockups like this is really good for your portfolio. It's a really great way to show what you are capable of as a designer and what like your designs could be used towards. I'm gonna place, let me see if I can grab it real quick. I've got a little floral element I can throw in here. Save. So there is our box design. I can go up to the top. I could do the top of the box. And like I said, what I would do is just do a little bit of, just a little bit of feathering on my objects. I can actually turn that off because I don't need that color layer. I would do linear burn in this instance so it matches, and then I would go in And I would clean this up so that it doesn't overlap. Just little bits here and there just to give it some depth. Not the perfect mock-up, but it'll do. Lotion. Feathering down just a little bit. What's happening here? I think this would be I would go in and I'd figure out kind of how to clean that up a bit so it looks a little cleaner, a little more realistic. But ta-da, like this is what you can come up with. This is what you can do in Photoshop. And there are ways, you know, the more you play around, the easier it's going to get. Again, every mockup is a bit different. So this is one I hadn't worked with before and it's got some blurry edges. So I would probably go in and do some adjusting to my layer mask just to, you know, to kind of give it a blurred edge a little bit so that it meshes a little more. But as far as like if you were to put this on your, you know, on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, your portfolio, it's a great way to show something you've done in context. You know, and this is one where the example, this one probably took me closer to about 2 hours to do. But it was one that ended up working really well. And I ended up with some really fun elements. And I really like throwing like the illustration behind the object. So it makes it fun. So we've got that. And then if I were to, you know, want to take this even further, I could have some, you know, I could have some fun and like, if I wanted, I don't know that I would do this. But it's an idea. Is something, especially if it's illustrated, you could pull, you know, you could kind of paint stuff in and give it a little bit of pizzazz for your, you know, for your social media and just play around with it. Another thing you can do is if you are working with, let me group all these so I can turn that off real quick. If you're working with something like this, what you can do, this is going to be real quick, but you can apply a gradient background. So I've got these pretty pastel options in here, so we'll do that. And then you can duplicate your bottle. You're going to flip it horizontal, then you're going to flip it vertical. You're going to drag it down and you're going to align it with your other bottle, bring it below that. You're going to drop the opacity of it down a bit. And then on your mask, you can do a gradient overlay. And so I'm going to pull from like my basics here. I'm going to pull from my basics. And then you can do, just kind of give it a little bit of a fade there. And you can give your mock-up just a little bit of depth so it looks like it's grounded. And then you can also create a new layer, go and use a soft brush, make it huge. Set it to white. We're going to take the opacity down a lot, and you can just tap once. Actually, I need to do that with there we go. And that will give it a little bit of a highlight behind it. And it just kind of makes it look a little real. And this is one where you could like throw the illustration and such around it. So lots to play with, lots to work with. It's a fun thing to, to play with and to learn how to do, because it's a great way to, again, put your work in context and give your clients something to see. And if you're trying to convince them like this is going to work, this is a great way to do it. But so I really appreciate everyone hanging around with me. I appreciate you as I stumbled through part of this, because like I said, 1,000 different ways to reach the same result. So I hope you all have a fantastic day. Make sure that you stay tuned for the weekday edit coming up right after this. And I will see you guys again soon. If you share your mock-ups, tag me at Shauna Parmesan, because I would love to see them. Bye.